Approaching the midnight hour, Belfast talks near deadline. United tell fans we're pulling out of the FA Cup. Tim's titanic battle sets Wimbledon alight. And the stars out tonight for Hollywood's latest blockbuster.
From ITN, the ITV Nightly News with Dermot Monahan.
Good evening. The Northern Ireland peace talks look like going right up to the midnight deadline and probably beyond. The Prime Minister is still there trying to cajole the parties into a deal, and his spokesman said he wouldn't be there if he didn't think one was still possible. Earlier tonight, Mr Blair spoke by phone to President Clinton, who's also getting involved. Our Ireland correspondent John Irvine reports.
As expected, these negotiations are going down to the wire. This evening, the main players have said nothing in public, an indication of the intensity and sensitivity of what's being discussed in private.
I think we just got to push on and get it done as fast as we can now.
As they have been since Monday morning, the two Prime Ministers are trying to guide the parties towards a breakthrough that's still hoped for, but still elusive. The latest deal being proposed by the two premiers would involve the unionists agreeing to set up an executive, provided there's a cast-iron guarantee from Sinn Féin of decommissioning. The man overseeing that, General John de Chastelain, would draw up a timetable for disarmament, and there would be a proviso that the executive would be suspended if that timetable was not met. That scenario presents both the Ulster Unionists and Sinn Féin with all sorts of problems. They have used the proposals as a basis for discussion, but so far the gap between the parties has not narrowed sufficiently.
We are genuinely very concerned. The level of engagement that we would expect to see if we were going to close this is not apparent at the moment.
That opinion is not shared by everybody, but what they do seem to be agreed upon is that the midnight deadline can be extended. Earlier, the Prime Minister talked to President Clinton, who is expected to contact and encourage party leaders later tonight. In the meantime, the world waits and watches and recognises the supreme effort being made to secure a compromise that would be every bit as significant as the Good Friday Agreement it would save. John Irvine, ITN, Stormont.
Well, I'm joined now by our political editor, Michael Brunson, who's also been following the negotiations. So, Mike, what's happening there right now?
Well, literally in the last few minutes, we have had both the main players out here in this area talking to the press. First, we had Gerry Adams. He said, quite bluntly, people in there, referring to the building, have to decide whether they want this to collapse or not, or whether to take the best chance of peace this century, as he put it, and whether we move forward based on jumping together. That is the favoured buzzword tonight, the idea that both Sinn Féin and the Ulster Unionists go forward together with the executive and with the start of decommissioning. We think it can still be done, Gerry Adams said. But then that was followed immediately, just literally a couple of minutes ago, by David Trimble, and he is saying that they have had nothing on paper, that they've had nothing concrete which satisfies them. However, they say that he, for his part, from the Ulster Unionists, is also confident that progress can be made. It is quite clear in my mind they will go through the midnight deadline. They will keep talking to try and hammer something out. At the moment, frankly, it doesn't look very good, but the Prime Ministers, particularly Tony Blair, are here. They're going to try and push through for a few more hours yet to see if they can get something done. Thank you, Michael. To the dismay of many of their fans, the FA Cup holders Manchester United confirmed today that they won't be defending it next season. Instead, they'll be playing in the new World Club Championships in Brazil and possibly helping to bring the World Cup competition to England. Colin Baker reports.
Disbelief tonight from the fans, but United definitely are out. For the first time, the FA Cup holders have chosen not to defend the Challenge Trophy. Europe's most successful team will go instead to Brazil in January to play in the World Club Championships, a decision taken because of fixture congestion and one which the FA hope will underline the seriousness of England's bid to stage the World Cup in 2006.
Disappointed, but I've no option. Believe me, we can't go for them all.
Football will now judge whether or not the tournament has been devalued by the absence of the triple champions. Most fans were in no doubt.
I'm gutted. I think we should defend it.
Well, that's a great shame, really, because they've earned the right to defend their title, and it's just degrading the competition without them.
Can't defend the treble, can we? Terrible.
ITV, who hold the television rights to the FA Cup, say they understand United's position and are sympathetic. There's no going back now. It is far too late to change minds. United are out of the world's oldest and arguably most prestigious knockout competition. But the club insists it is a one-off. They will be back the season after next. Colin Baker, ITN, Old Trafford.
The Home Secretary, Jack Straw, showed his face to some of the people still queuing for passports today and said he didn't see the chaos as a resigning matter. The government line was that the queues were getting shorter. Here's Helen Wright.
Would-be travellers queued throughout the day at Glasgow's passport office, as they have at processing centres across the UK, frustrated and angry at the current delays.
I've tried phoning them, I was faxing them a letter that looked like a begging letter, just needing an answer of some sort, and I just haven't heard from anybody.
The Home Secretary visited London's passport office to hear people's problems for himself. It was a clear PR exercise, but Jack Straw denied his job was on the line.
I don't think it's come to that. Thank you very much for asking. My job is to sort out the problems.
But Mr Straws admitted the service won't be back to normal until October, even though 100 extra staff will be taken on to clear the backlog.
The numbers that they've announced will help, but they will help once they're trained and in the office.
500,000 people are now waiting longer than they should for a passport. It's because of computer problems and new rules that mean children who aren't already on their parents' passports have to have their own. But in a concession tonight, the Home Office said anyone who applies for their passport in person will no longer have to pay the usual £10 handling fee if they sent in their application more than 2 weeks ago. Helen Wright, ITN, at the London Passport Office.
The cross-channel ferries were today packed with shoppers anxious to have a last bite at the duty-free cherry. The perk, which grew into an EU-wide industry worth £4.5 billion a year, ends an hour from now at midnight. Here's Adrian Britton.
The day service to Le Havre returning to Portsmouth. For the passengers on board, this has been the final day to make that dash for duty-free. The shelves of cigarettes and alcohol have been emptying fast. Passengers cashing in before the midnight deadline.
I think it's a great shame.
We've had a
great loss to everybody.
Rely on it and find it very useful. And it's one of the perks of going abroad, isn't it?
Some companies had warned the demise of duty-free would mean job losses. Now they say they'll carry on selling at duty-free prices, absorbing the cost themselves, though ultimately it's the passenger who's likely to pay.
As a result of duty-free going, one thing is absolutely certain is that fares will have to rise to compensate.
And as soon as cross-channel ferries enter international waters, goods will be sold at the lower French duty rates.
What I think you will see is a lot more people going into French territorial waters, loading up at French duty rates and bringing all those goods back, which will have a major adverse impact on the UK exchequer and the UK economy.
There'll still be duty-free for those travelling outside Europe, but for European travellers, this tax perk is set to become a distant holiday memory. Adrian Britton, ITN, Portsmouth.
Tim Henman battled through to a fourth consecutive quarter-final at Wimbledon today in an epic encounter with the American Jim Courier. He had his centre court fans on the edges of their seats, but Henman kept his own nerve to save 3 match points and then win. Here's our sports reporter Peter Staunton.
Leaving for home tonight for a well-earned rest, Tim Henman is going to need all the sleep he can get. For tomorrow, it's the quarter-final, and if all goes well, it's the semi the day after that. He'd survived an afternoon of the highest possible tension, shared by just about everyone at Wimbledon, thanks to the big screen. And how he made them suffer. From a position of strength, he managed to lose the fourth set, the one interrupted so long ago by the weather. So it was down to a fifth set shootout. Courier, for once, was being outgunned. Yet there was more agony in store. 2 match points against him. It looked all over. Somehow his nerve held. And then held again on a third match point to Courier. When Henman finally broke the Americans' dogged resistance, there was no mercy for the man who'd helped beat Great Britain in the Davis Cup. And Henman was revelling in the moment.
I was like telling myself, yeah, you've got to enjoy this. This is what it's all about. And I took a step back from my life, and I just thought, God, who are you trying to kid?
Greg Rosetsky failed again to realise his Grand Slam dream and went out tamely to another big server, Mark Philippoussis. After winning the first set, Rosetsky's head went down and stayed down. He had a leg injury, but didn't use it as an excuse. Meanwhile, Boris Becker bowed out with his customary grace. After losing in 3 sets to second seed Rafter, Centre Court gave their hero the warmest of send-offs. His record of winning here as a 17-year-old qualifier may stand forever. So Tim Henman's left to fly the British flag alone, and it won't be easy. He's up against a former finalist in Cedric Pierline, and he'll be fighting the weather. More rain is forecast for tomorrow. Peter Staunton, ITN Sport, Wimbledon.
So, to recap on those results, Tim Henman is through to the quarter-finals after beating Jim Courier by 3 sets to 2. But Greg Rosetsky was knocked out by Mark Philippoussis by 3 sets to 1. And second seed, Pat Rafter beat Boris Becker in straight sets. In the women's singles, Venus Williams beat Anna Kournikova, and Steffi Graf is through after beating Kim Clijsters in straight sets. Tomorrow, Tim Henman takes on Cedric Pierline. Pete Sampras is up against Mark Philippoussis, and Steffi Graf meets Venus Williams in the women's quarter-finals. Catherine Zeta-Jones arrived on the arm of the 54-year-old Michael Douglas at the UK premiere of her new film Entrapment in Edinburgh tonight. She stars in it with Sean Connery, aged 68, and he was there too. Our Scotland correspondent Linda Kennedy reports.
To loud cheers, Sean Connery arrived at the premiere of Entrapment. But perhaps more attention was lavished on co-star Catherine Zeta-Jones, out in public with her new boyfriend, film star Michael Douglas. The former 007 is in town for the opening of Scotland's Parliament tomorrow. He was asked which was more important to him, that or his premiere.
Oh, the opening of Parliament. Yeah. Well, we waited 300 years for one. I've waited 40 years for it. I've only waited 4 years for this one.
This is how it has to be. First we try.
Tonight, though, was all about his new movie. In it, Connery plays an art thief who teams up with Catherine Zeta-Jones for a multi-billion-dollar heist. A box office smash in the States and expected to be a blockbuster across Britain this summer. Sean Connery insisted the premiere was held here to provide a glamorous start for Scotland's celebrations. Linda Kennedy, ITN, Edinburgh.
The winning numbers in tonight's lottery draw were 2, 14, 19, 25, 32 and 49, and the bonus ball was 31. Camelot say there are 2 winning tickets sharing a jackpot of £3.8 million. The main news again, there's still no breakthrough in the Northern Ireland peace negotiations, though they're still talking with less than an hour to go to the deadline. The sticking point is IRA arms and when decommissioning is to start. The FA Cup holders Manchester United confirmed that they won't be defending it next season, and Tim Henman is through to the quarter-finals at Wimbledon after an epic encounter with the American Jim Courier. Tonight's financial figures, the FTSE 100 share index closed up 11 points. On Wall Street, the Dow Jones closed up more than 155 after an expected 0.25% rise in interest rates in America, and the pound was up a fraction against the dollar. Now time for a look at tomorrow's papers. The Times, like all the other broadsheets, leads on those Belfast peace talks and says they're going down to the wire. Also on the front page are pictures of Tim Henman and Greg Rosetsky reporting Britain's mixed fortunes at Wimbledon today. The Guardian says that President Clinton is poised to intervene in the peace talks to try to break the deadlock. The Express reports on claims by another prisoner that the rogue trader Nick Leeson boasted affording £2 million for when he comes out of jail. The Mirror has the Manchester United decision to pull out of the FA Cup and simply says, stop them. The Sun devotes all of its front page to Tim Henman's girlfriend Lucy Heald and her nail-biting watch from the Wimbledon sidelines. And that's it for now. We'll have the latest from Northern Ireland in our bulletins throughout the night. For now, from all of us on the ITV Nightly News, good night.